Hey guys, aReNGee here, and I'm back with a video deck tech for a new deck that I've been testing around. Uh, the name of the deck is Turbo Hour or Turbo Witching Hour, and it's built around casting the Witching Hour as quickly and reliably as possible. The Witching Hour is not an easy card to cast. It costs 24 mana at its initial point and requires 6 Shadow Influence, so the deck has been built in a very different way from usual decks in order to enable it, and plays a lot of cards that are honestly not that good. Um, Basically, whenever you play another card of any type, you reduce the cost of Witching Hour by 1, and this refers to sigils, this refers to spells, and this refers to units. And notably, this refers to units that are generated by cards like Assembly Line, or Auto Furnace, or the Slumbering Stone token. So basically, whenever you cast Assembly Line, it takes one cost off for the spell, and then 3 off for the Grenadin, total of 4. Auto Furnace, cost goes down by 3. Slumbering Stone tokens, cost goes down by 2. Clever Stranger, cost goes down by 2. Seek Power, cost goes down by 2. 1 for the Seek, 1 for the Sigil that you actually play. Now, for the influence requirements, 6 Shadow, especially if you want to cast this on turn 6 or 7, is very, very heavy, and you need to play a lot of Shadow Sigils. That's why we got 14 in here, and every power except for 3 of them actually generates Shadow Influence. In addition to this, we've got the Seek Power to help us find it, and also plays double duty of getting us our other colors. And we're playing a Stranger package. Stonescar Stranger is great because you can keep a double Shadow Sigil hand and get that Fire Influence. You never want to actually cast a Fire Sigil because it slows down your Shadow Influence gain, but a lot of the red cards are very powerful and very important, so you need that influence. We're playing a little bit different version that plays a single blue sigil. We've got Felon Stranger as an additional way to enable it. So between Seek Power, Felon Stranger, and 1 Primal Sigil, it's about 7 sources to play a couple Champions of Cunning. We've totally given up on the Primal part of Champion of Cunning, but we're very interested in the Charge part. You'll almost always have the 5 Shadow in order to enable it, and that allows you to play Champion of Cunning and Witching Hour on the same turn for a quick 20 points of charge damage. 25 actually, sorry. Which is a whole lot of burst for a deck like this, especially when you can do that as early as turn 7 or 8 pretty reliably. Now, the rest of the deck is basically focused around staying alive as long as possible and playing a lot of token generation in order to reduce the Witching Hour's cost. Since we're playing a lot of tokens, Combust is a relatively free unconditional removal spell, and very importantly, it's cheap. It also enables Auto Furnace and sacrifices Slumbering Stone, Strangers, things like that. It's pretty useful. Seek Power helps fix our power, which is very important. Allows us to play just a very small amount of non-shadow sigils while still having consistency in finding them. And it also does double duty of buffing up the Witching Hour. Slumbering Stone is I found it to be better than Ticking Grenadin. It's less aggressive, but the flying is often useful, and it's better to sacrifice a Slumbering Stone than almost any other card, because you don't actually go down a unit on board. Torch is simply the best removal spell in the early game. Originally I was concerned about the fire influence and how difficult it would be to get, but it turns out that the way the deck's built, it's usually not too hard to find it by turn 2 or 3. So it's pretty consistently online. It's very useful. Annihilate, also very cheap, very good. Doesn't hit any of the multicolor stuff, but we've got a lot of unconditional removal for those, and it just gives us another cheap early game spell to keep us in the game. Clever Stranger, basically, we're playing a lot of Strangers already. It does pop any of them into a Grenadin, which counts for Witching Hour. So it plays double duty of stalling for time because your Strangers can block, turn into more chump blockers, and it also reduces the Witching Hour quite a bit. Devour is basically the best card draw that you get in these colors, unless you're willing to go deeper into Primal. It allows us to sacrifice our random Strangers, our Slumbering Stones, etc., and dig through our deck looking for the Witching Hour, because it's our most important card. It also plays well against removal, gives us a bit of life gain against the aggressive decks, and is overall pretty useful. Stranger package is there just for influence. The bodies are sometimes relevant. Sometimes you play a couple 2/2s and beat down, but there's no real way to enable them other than Clever Stranger, and that doesn't make them any stronger in combat. Assembly line basically reads 3 power, reduce witching hours cost by 4, but also happens to give you 3 chump blockers that you can do stuff with. So its main purpose is just to enable hour, but sometimes, I mean, they play this card in aggressive decks for a reason. 3 power for 3 1/1s is not the worst deal. Death Strike, 4 of them. Anybody who's tapping out to play some pretty big units, we can turn it around on them. This kills all of the big stuff that really hurts us, like Statuary Maiden, very annoying. Stuff like any of the champions are pretty bad. Anything that outgrows Torch and isn't multicolor, Death Strike will deal with it. Auto Furnace is our main other win condition in the deck. If you get a couple of Auto Furnaces going with all of your sacrifice stuff, you can get them to grow pretty big. Usually your opponents will have removal for them, but they do buff up the Witching Hour. And they also play pretty well with the next card, which is Champion of Cunning. Champion of Cunning is usually just a 5/5, your units have +1/+1 in charge, which combos with Witching Hour for O-hit KOs, and also can come out of nowhere to buff up all of your random tokens, and you'll just smash in for damage. Unfortunately, I haven't found it to be particularly feasible to go for that 5 primal and give them evasion as well, but just having a surprise charge booster is pretty good in this sort of deck. And by the time you want to cast it, you'll usually be able to find a Seek Power or a Felon Stranger in order to get that 1 primal. And finally, of course, the Witching Hour is our win condition. Usually when you play this card, you'll use the Pale Rider to kill something, or the Killer Pale Rider to kill something, and then you'll stabilize with 3 4/4s. And as an added bonus, the Witching Hour actually counts as 5 different cards, so your next Witching Hour is almost always free. It's not too unusual if you draw 2 to be able to play both of them in the same turn, which is usually an unbeatable board string. Very good at rebuilding against Wraths, very good at fighting for board control since you've got an evasive creature, a deadly creature, and a lifesteal creature, and also a removal spell, so you can stabilize against almost any kind of board. It's a very powerful card, and this deck is warped very much in order to play it as quickly as possible. But when you do play it, it will almost always win you the game. The problems with this deck is sometimes you just don't draw Witching Hour, and your deck is basically a very, very bad version of some kind of aggro tokens list. Because you don't have any of the real token enablers, stuff like Bandit Queen, you don't have Madness, you don't really have any of the good pressure cards. You're just playing a lot of 1/1s and hoping that you get there. Auto Furnace is a backup win condition, but it's not a very good one or a very stable one. So you're relying pretty hard on drawing the Witching Hour as early as possible. But you have the tools to get to the late game in order to cast it. It's also a very fun deck. Witching Hour is a fantastic card to cast. And just trading off all of your 1/1s and things for your opponent's creatures until you eventually make a big reversal is, well, I find it really fun. It's a very enjoyable deck to play. Is it top tier? I don't think so right now. Is this the best build of it? This is the best build that I've been able to find at this point. And I'm very interested to see what other people can do with it. The Champion of Cunning Splash might not be worth it, but it's not a huge investment in order to do it, and it does give you an extra burst combo to win the game. So I've been pretty happy with it. The Stone Scar Stranger is almost certainly mandatory if you're going to cast these cards, just because of how many Shadow Sigils you need to play. And Felon Stranger isn't that big of a route. You could play this deck more aggressively, but I find that just when it comes to enabling Witching Hour, going all in on it is the best way to do so, because Witching Hour requires a lot of casts. 6, usually in a game, you get to play 6 sigils, so it goes down to 18. Assembly line is 4, so it goes down to 14. Auto Furnace 3, 11. You'll play Slumbering Stone, that's 2. Maybe you played a Seek Power, that's 2. That brings us down to 7. And then you can finally cast the thing. So as long as you draw the correct cards, it's not too hard to cast it on 6 or 7 power. But if you don't and you're playing just 1-for-1s, it takes a very long time to actually get up to Witching Hour power. So, without further ado, let's take a look at how the deck performs in-game.